How many of you would like a lesson on dealing with social anxiety? The ability to talk to strangers and make conversation and stuff. How many of you would like to hear about curing social anxiety? Yeah, look at all the yeses. All right. So I'll give you the quick lesson right now. I'm actually talking to some folks on this very topic. I had severe social anxiety. Snickers, quiet. And let me tell you how I got through it. The number one thing was taking the Dale Carnegie course, but you don't have to take that course if you just do what they did. And the big part of the course was they would make each student give a speech for which they were not terribly prepared, just a little bit prepared, in front of a class. So it's the most embarrassing, scary social situation. And then at the end of it, the class was instructed to just clap and say that was a good job. So everybody's experience at the end of the class was they kept doing things that should have been embarrassing, but they kept turning out positive because people said, hey, good job. Great job. And they would never mention anything they did wrong. That was a rule of the class. So the class rule was even the instructor would not tell any student, in public or even privately, anything they had ever done wrong. They would only mention the things they did right. And so it created in your head an association with a positive experience to this social anxiety. Now they dealt with it mostly in the public speaking realm, but also gave some advice about how to talk to people. And here's the big tip. Here's the Dale Carnegie tip. So if you're thinking about a social interaction as if it has no rules, you could be really intimidated. Because you go into the social interaction, you go, I don't know what to do. But all these other people seem to know what to do. They know what to say. Oh God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to act. If you go into a social situation like that, well, you're going to have a little anxiety because you don't know what to do. But have you noticed that even shy people can do things like sell tickets at the movie theater, or they can do anything where the rules are very well developed. So no matter how shy you are, you can still deal with people if you know what the rules are. Okay, it's like, okay, it's my job to sell you a ticket. You give me money, I say thank you. You say what, I tell you what time the movie is, that sort of thing. So if you can get your random seeming interactions down to a set of rules that you know and work every time for pretty much every situation, then you lose the sense of not knowing what to do because you're like, oh, it's rules. And here are the rules. Dale Carnegie teaches these, but you're going to hear them right now, and it's just this easy. The rule is this. Number one, people care about themselves more than they care about you. They don't want to hear your story. They don't want to hear your joke. They don't want to hear your observation. They don't want to hear your point of view. Now, I'm saying this like it's an absolute. It's not an absolute. Sometimes they do like to hear your joke. Sometimes they do like to hear your story. Sometimes they do want to hear your opinion. But you know what? They'll probably ask for it if they want it. And there are some people who are so good at telling stories that people do want to hear them. But they're kind of rare. So don't assume you're one of those people. Instead, don't use that as your rules. Even though it's possible to tell a story that people like, don't assume that's one of the rules of social interaction. You want to hold that one back. All right? Here are the rules that will work every time. Ask people to talk about themselves. That's it. That rule will work 100% of the time. It will never fail because everybody likes to talk about themselves. There are several reasons for that. Number one, people care about themselves. Right? That's the big one. Number two, and this is really important, the second one is the important reason, that's sort of the magic sauce. The other person also has social anxiety. Not every time, but way more than you think, probably 80% of the time. I would say modestly, conservatively, 80% of the people you ever talk with will have at least a little bit of anxiety about what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say in this situation? And when you ask them questions about themselves, you just solve their biggest problem. What do you talk about? All right? So don't go into these social situations saying to yourself, how do I solve my problem? If you go into a social situation saying, I've got a problem, I'm nervous, I've got anxiety, how do I solve my problem? That's the wrong mindset. And that'll get you just to stress and worry, and you'll be running out of the room. Here's the mindset when you go into a social situation. How do I solve their problem? It's a whole bunch of people in a room with a problem. They all have the same problem, which is they're wondering what to do next. Who do I talk to? What do I say? What can I say that will make everybody happy, etc.? You solve their problem, and they're going to think you're the most awesome person who ever walked in the room. And how easy is it to solve their problem? It could not be easier. You can't even find anything easier than this. It's the easiest thing you will ever do is to solve the other person's problem in a social situation. Their problem is, what do I do? What do I say? Who do I talk to? So you walk up to them, you say, hi. Hi is always your best opener, male or female. Hi, I'm Scott. Simple as that. I'm Bob. I'm Jane. I'm Scott. And you introduce yourself. Now, if they don't automatically offer their name, you probably have found somebody who has more social anxiety than you do. Have you ever come up to somebody and introduced yourself and they don't tell you their name? Right? That person has some social anxiety. Right? If you do introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm Scott, and the other person says, hey, I'm Bob, good to meet you. Well, probably that's a person who either doesn't have social anxiety, which is rare, or they've learned the rules. And the rules are, if somebody asks you, if introduces themselves and says, my name's Scott, you should say, hey, Scott. And it's good to repeat their name. That's a good rule, too. Remember that one. When somebody says their name, repeat it. Maybe I like to ask a question about the name if it's an unusual one. If somebody says, hey, my name is Sarah, I'll say, oh, Sarah, it's my favorite name. I had a cat named Sarah. Do you spell it with an H on the end? Talking about somebody's name makes them comfortable and also helps you remember it. So if you don't have something to say about the name, at least repeat it. So if somebody says, hi, I'm Scott, you say, hey, Scott, nice to meet you. I'm Bob. All right? So you got some rules. Now, if you go up to somebody and introduce yourself and all you've done is your names, you've created a new social problem, which is it's two people who just met each other and they got nothing to talk about. So you should come into that situation with at least one general question that works for everybody. All right? So you should not come into a social situation thinking, what's the one question to ask this one person? That's kind of pressure. You don't need that. So instead go in and say, what's a general question I can ask anybody? And it might be, depending on the type of group, you might say, hey, who do you know here? Do you know the groom or the bride? If it's a wedding, let's say. That's a good general start. Who do you know here? What is your connection to this? Or what do you think of the event so far? Or are you having fun? So some general question just to get them talking. And then you want to follow up with questions. And here's the other trick of social interactions. When you are asking questions, it feels like you're going too far. All right, the normal way that you feel when you meet a stranger and start asking questions is, why am I asking questions of this? Why can't I just leave them alone? Why am I asking questions of this stranger? It feels awkward. All right, but you will learn that the other person is not feeling what you're feeling. What they will feel is, oh my God, here's somebody asking questions about me. You just solved my biggest problem. My biggest problem was what to do and who to talk to. You just solved it. Thank you. I can answer a question. So people will not dislike your questions. It just feels like they might, but they really don't. They love questions about themselves. And then if you can dig down a little bit, ask a few more questions like, what do you do for a living? Do you like it? Where do you live? Do you have a family? Those are your basic questions, all right? What do you do? Where do you live? What's your family situation? If you run out of those, good ones are also, got any vacations planned? Let's say it's the beginning of the summer. You say, hey, you have any plans for the summer? Have any plans for Christmas? So depending on what season it is, you'd say, hey, you got any good plans for whatever's coming up? And most people do. So it gives them something to talk about. And the next big secret is thinking about things in the larger context. I like to imagine how I'm going to feel on my deathbed. So if I walk into an awkward situation and you feel like an automatic little embarrassment, you start blushing and you're thinking, oh God, I don't know what to say. I'm blushing. I'm panicking. I feel awkward. I don't know what to do. Ask yourself if you're going to remember this on your deathbed. All right? And the answer is no. If you put all this stuff in context, almost none of it matters. None of it matters. And then you want to practice putting yourself in embarrassing situations. This is really critical. Being comfortable in a social situation is completely a practice thing. It's not something you're born with. It's just practice. I'm convinced that the people who seem to be naturally good at it have picked it up from family members, meaning that there's nothing natural about it. They've just observed people who are good at it, and they're like, oh, every time my dad meets somebody, he acts a certain way. Well, that must work. I'll just sort of act like my dad does because people seem to like him. Right? So probably there's no such thing as people who are just born with some good social gene or something like that. There are definitely people who are born shy. That's a physical thing. But nobody's born knowing how to do it. You either saw somebody do it or you learned it like you're learning it right now, and then you practiced it or you didn't. But the practice is critical. And the most important part of the practice is failing. All right? So you want to practice in a way that guarantees you're going to be pressing your ability to take embarrassment. All right? If it doesn't have at least the risk of embarrassing you, you haven't tried hard enough. So you should be thinking about it in terms of gaining a skill when you're doing it. All right? If you're thinking to yourself, my God, I hope I do or hope I don't embarrass myself, your head is in all the wrong places. You should be going into a social situation saying, wow, there might be some good stories that come out of this about how I embarrass myself. I've actually reached a point where when I embarrass myself just mortally, the kind of thing that would have made me die when I was younger, it literally seems funny to me even in the moment. Because I know it's going to be a good story. I know it won't hurt me. I know my body will not be any different. I know my income will not change. Let me give you a good example. This is a perfect example. So the other day, just before I flew, I saw a tweet from Frank Luntz in which he was listing a bunch of products that were subject to the trade war. Now, I misread his tweet and thought that that China was putting a tariff on their goods, but it was the opposite. So in other words, I just misread the tweet. Now, I have a degree in economics, and I talk about this topic all the time, but if you saw my tweet, it looked like a moron who didn't even know what a tariff was. And it would be hard to explain it away, because if you looked at my tweet, it was just somebody who completely didn't understand what a tariff was. Now, that wasn't the problem. I do understand what a tariff is. I do have a degree in economics and an MBA, and I do pay attention, so I do know what it is. But I misread his tweet. I was in a hurry, and then I got on a plane so that I couldn't check Twitter for a few hours. And when I go to get off the plane, my Twitter feed is full of people just mocking me for being stupid about not understanding even what a tariff is. Now, it was totally just a mistake, It was totally just a brain malfunction of, reading something wrong and my head was in a different place, and, it was just a mistake. There was a time when seeing all these people call me out for being stupid in public would have been embarrassing. When I get off the plane and I look at this, hundreds of people seem to be calling me stupid because they're right. What I did was just stupid. There's no other explanation for it, right? My brain should have done better, and it didn't in that particular situation. It doesn't mean that, my IQ went down. It means, like everybody in the world, I did something stupid in that moment. Does it bother me? No. Did it make a good story? Well, I just told it. So every time I have an embarrassing situation, it helps that I'm a writer, but I always say to myself, all right, that's a good story. I'll store that one away. That's going to come in handy. Even Frank Luntz corrected me publicly. Now, keep in mind that Frank was one of the people who were saying that Hillary Clinton was definitely, absolutely going to win the election just hours before she didn't. And it's his job to kind of know how things are going to turn out. So that's embarrassing. But I'll bet he wasn't embarrassed. Like, not a lot. Certainly he didn't prefer it. He would have preferred being right over being wrong. But I'll bet you, and this is just speculation, I don't know this for sure, but I'll bet you Frank Luntz, like me, has spent enough time in public that he has embarrassed himself just in the normal course of life, that he's just used to it. I'll bet you that what would have been a crippling, debilitating embarrassment for anybody else, he probably just said, oh, crap, got that one wrong. Well, that's on me. That'll live forever on my Twitter feed, but it's kind of funny. Scott, do you know how tariffs work? Yes, I know how tariffs work. But if you read my Twitter feed, you'd think I didn't. Was I born shameless? No. So that was really my point. You may have come in late. Shamelessness is something you learn. So I was born super shy, super social anxiety, and have learned through just practice and learning to put things in context and failing enough times in public that it's just so routine. The big thing you learn about these things is that, I got off the plane, I saw that my tweet was just stupid and that people were mocking me mercilessly for being stupid in public. And I always do the same thing. I always think, is anything different in my physical environment? These are strangers. I don't care about them. I don't need them for a job. I'm not trying to make love to them. They can't hurt me. Physically, I'm fine. I'm still going to eat lunch. I'm going to go to sleep tonight. Just nothing changed. There was nothing in my actual physical real life that was any different because I had just grossly humiliated myself in public in front of 223,000 followers, plus whoever they forwarded it to. And it will live forever. That tweet, even though I took down the tweet, people had screenshots and stuff. So my stupidity will live forever in infamy. Did it bother me? No, not really. People make mistakes. So I'm an introvert who has learned to be an extrovert. And that's what I'm trying to teach you, is that it's a learned skill and that you can all learn it. Maybe not to the same degree, but it's very learnable. It's way more learnable than almost anything else. If you said, hey, I'm going to just take up a sport, chances are you're not going to be good at it. You might be okay. But getting good at taking embarrassment, getting good at handling social situations is just rules-based and practice. It is that simple, and everybody can be good at it. Somebody said that they're an extrovert who learned how to shut up. That's actually a big deal. If you can be an extrovert and learn how to dial it back when the situation calls for it, you're way ahead of a lot of people. There's nothing worse than an extrovert who thinks that other people are enjoying it all the time. That's the person you don't want to spend time with. Somebody said, did Trump watch Stormy's videos ahead of time? Meaning before they were involved, I think you mean. Well, I don't know, but if he's normal, he may have done a little Googling. Homework. Yeah, let me give you some social anxiety homework. Here's another little tip. One of the things you should do is learn to breathe properly. So, you might want to Google this, but learn to breathe through your diaphragm, and don't use your top of your chest for breathing, because that makes you nervous. So you can make yourself less anxious by getting your breathing right, even if you don't feel like breathing that way. So your breath is one of the few things that is both a conscious and an subconscious thing, right? There aren't too many things that are like that. To move my hand, that's always a conscious thing. But breathing, I'm not really thinking about it, I'm doing it. And if you're like me, sometimes you'll go for extended periods where you don't breathe. Like if I'm in any kind of an anxious situation, I'll notice that I just haven't breathed for 10 seconds or so. So just knowing to take big breaths will calm you down. And when your body is calmed down, you're in much better shape to handle any situation, social and otherwise. You also want to learn how to have a good voice. Here's the quickest way to have good voice. If you hum happy birthday, you'll feel, until you feel the vibration in your face, it's called the mask of your face. So just do this. You go, the very next thing you say will be your perfect voice. Did you notice how my voice changed immediately after humming? That's what you're supposed. That's the point of it. This is a famous voice coach technique. So try it at home. You'll be amazed. The immediate thing you say after humming "Happy Birthday," if you feel it up here, feel the actual vibrating here, and the next thing you say will be perfectly voiced. This is my perfect voice. It's the one that happens right after I've hummed "Happy Birthday." Now the beauty is that you can hum "Happy Birthday" quietly in a room full of people, and nobody knows you're doing it. You could be walking around with your drink in your hand and go, "Hey, how are you? My name is Scott. What's your name?" And you speak louder and you command the room a little bit better. And if your voice is good and it sounds unrestricted because you've got your breathing right and you've moved your voice control up to the mask of your face, if you get those two together, the breathing through your bottom of your stomach, not your chest. If you get the breathing right, and then you hum, and get the voice right, and you go into a social situation, watch what that does to bring down your social anxiety. Here's the worst way to meet somebody. My name's Scott. My name is Scott. How are you? What? I said, how are you? What? How are you? How are you? Okay, that's like anxiety central right there. If you get your breathing right and your voice right, hey, how's it going? My name is Scott. You enjoying yourself? Why are you here? Who do you know? Are you married? Are you married is a bad question. What do you do? What's your job? Where do you live? All right. So you notice as soon as I take my voice up, it's more commanding, isn't it? If you take a confident, commanding, physical persona to a social situation, the other person will get relaxed, right? They'll feel comfortable because you're projecting a comfortable look. You make the other person feel the way your body tells them to feel. If you walk up to somebody acting anxious, they'll start acting anxious too. And then you've got this awkward thing going on. If you walk up to even an anxious person acting confident, you can make the anxious person more confident because you control them with your physicality. All right? So you want the other person to feel good because that's your win. All right? You're fixing your own breathing, you're fixing your own voice for the purpose of making the other person feel good. That's it. If you think in terms of how to make yourself feel good, that's the losing strategy. For social interaction, you should say to yourself, what makes that person feel good? And then that's what you bring. You bring it physically, you bring it in your interest, your questions, your body language. What makes this person feels good? If you leave a social interaction with that, that having been your goal, that person's going to love you. It almost doesn't matter what happens. If you bring that intention into an interaction, empathy is a good word for it. If you bring that intention, people pick up the intention, they like it, and then it doesn't matter what you say. They're going to like you. All right, was this useful? Did anybody like this social anxiety primer? I would ask some of you who thought that some of this was good to test it. And go out and try to embarrass yourself, and then immediately note that nothing changed in your life. Just go embarrass yourself, and then watch how it didn't make any difference. And if you do it enough, it just becomes natural. All right. Well, I'm glad that you were here for this, and go practice. And I'm going to ask again how it went, and then we'll find out. Talk to you later.